Some games grab you right away, while others take their time. Some start slow with a lengthy prologue that doesn't feel too exciting at first, but as you progress, maybe halfway through or even near the end, you suddenly realize just how incredible the game truly is. So, in this video, I'll talk about some amazing games that takes a while to draw you in, or at least it took me a while to draw in, but once they do pull you, you won't be able to stop. You'll be eager to see what happens next. Days Gone. Man, this game. I'm not gonna lie, when I first booted it up, I was like, okay, another zombie game. Really? I mean, we've seen so many post-apocalyptic worlds overrun by the undead, and at first glance, Days Gone didn't feel like it was bringing anything new to the table. The opening hours were slow, like really slow. You're just this biker dude, Deacon St. John, riding around doing fetch quests and dealing with some cliche biker dialogue. I was bored, I put it down after a few hours and didn't touch it for months. But then, something made me give it another shot. Maybe it was the hype I kept hearing from people who stuck with it, or maybe I just needed a game to sink my teeth into. Whatever it was, I'm so glad I went back, because here's the thing, Days Gone is a slow burn, but once it clicks, it clicks. First off, the world. Oh man, the world. It's set in this gorgeous, sprawling Pacific Northwest landscape. Flush forests, abandoned towns, snowy mountains. It's not just a backdrop, it feels alive, the weather changes, the day-night cycle actually matters, and the zombies, or freakers as they're called, become more aggressive at night. Speaking of freakers, the hordes in this game are terrifying. At first you're just dealing with small groups, but later on you're facing these massive swarms of hundreds of zombies. It's chaotic, intense, and so satisfying when you finally take one down. Then there's Deacon. Yeah, he starts off as this gruff, stereotypical biker guy, but as the story unfolds, you realize there's more to him. His relationship with his best friend Boozer and his quest to find his wife Sarah actually had me invested. The emotional beats hit harder than I expected, and by the end, I was fully on board with Deacon's journey, and the gameplay. It gets so much better once you upgrade your bike and your skills. At first, the bike feels clunky and annoying to maintain, but once you get the hang of it, it becomes your best friend. Riding through the open world, scavenging for supplies, and planning your attacks on enemy camps or freaker hordes, it all starts to feel incredibly rewarding. Days Gone is one of those games that doesn't grab you right away. It takes its time to build up, but once it does, it becomes this immersive, thrilling experience that I couldn't put down. It's not perfect, it's got its janky moments and some pacing issues, but it's a game that completely won me over. If you bounced off it early like I did, do yourself a favor and give it another shot. You might just find yourself falling in love with it too. NieR Automata. This game, wow, it's one of those titles that doesn't just sit in your library, it lingers in your mind, your emotions, even your philosophy. But here's the thing, it didn't start that way for me. When I first played it, I was confused, maybe even a little frustrated. The opening hours threw me into this chaotic mix of hack and slash combat, bullet hell mechanics, and a story that felt like it was speaking in riddles. I didn't get it, I didn't see what everyone was raving about, so I put it down for months. But then, something happened. Maybe it was the way people kept talking about it with this almost reverent tone, or maybe it was just the nagging feeling that I'd missed something important. Whatever it was, I went back, and this time I didn't just play it, I let it consume me. And holy heck am I glad I did. Let's start with the gameplay. At first glance, it's flashy but straightforward. You're 2B, an android with a sword, slicing through robots in a ruined world. But the more I played, the more I realized how layered it all is. The combat isn't just about mashing buttons, it's about rhythm, timing, and adapting to the chaos around you. You've got your sword, your pod's ranged attacks, and even this weird but satisfying dodge mechanic that feels like you're dancing through bullets. And the bosses? Ooh, the bosses. They're not just fights, they're spectacles. Each one feels like a mini movie, blending action, emotion, and sheer absurdity in a way only Yoko Taro could pull off. Then there's the story. Oh man, the story. At first it seems simple. Androids fighting machines to save humanity. But as you peel back the layers, it becomes something so much more. It's a meditation on existence, on what it means to have a soul, and on the futility of war. And the way it's told through multiple playthroughs, each revealing new perspectives, is nothing short of genius. By the time I reached the true ending, I was sitting there staring at the screen, completely gutted. It's not just a story, it's an experience that challenges you to think and feel in ways most games don't even attempt. And the music, oh, the music. I don't think I've ever played a game where the soundtrack felt so integral to the experience. Tracks like City Ruins and Become as Gods aren't just background noise, they're part of the world, part of the emotion. There were moments where I just stopped playing, sit back, and let the music carry me. It's that good. NieR Automata isn't a game you get right away. It's weird, it's messy, and it doesn't care if you're confused, but if you give it the time, if you let it pull you into its strange, beautiful world, it becomes something unforgettable. It's not just a game, it's art. And if you walked away from it like I did at first, trust me, go back. It might just change the way you see games forever. Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy, it's a weird one for me. When I first started playing, I wasn't feeling it, like, at all. I went in expecting this high-energy, action-packed space adventure, but the opening hours felt off. The pacing was slow, the combat seemed shallow, and the characters, while familiar, didn't feel like they were clicking. I thought, okay, this is just another licensed game trying to cash in on the Marvel hype. I put it down after a couple chapters, convinced it wasn't for me. But then something happened. I kept hearing people talk about it, not just as a good Marvel game, but as a great game, period. So I decided to give it another shot when the game became free on Epic Games, and wow, am I glad I did. Because Guardians of the Galaxy isn't just a game, it's a journey. It's a game that starts slow, but builds into something truly special, and it won me over in ways I didn't expect. Let's start with the tone. This game is funny. Like, genuinely funny. Not just Marvel quip funny, but laugh out loud, pause the game to catch your breath funny. The banter between the Guardians is sharp, witty, and full of personality, but here's the thing, it's not just comedy for the sake of comedy. The humor is rooted in the characters and their relationships. Rocket's sarcasm, Drax's literal-mindedness, Gamora's dry wit. It all feels natural, like you're hanging out with a group of friends who love to roast each other. And the best part, the game lets you participate in it. There are moments where you, as Star-Lord, get to choose how to respond in conversations, and your choices can lead to some hilarious or awkward outcomes. Then there's the world building. The galaxy in this game feels alive. Every planet, every spaceship, every alien market is packed with detail and personality. The art design is stunning, with vibrant colors and creative alien landscapes that make you want to explore every corner. And the lore, oh the lore. The game does an incredible job of weaving its own unique story into the larger Marvel universe. You'll encounter alien cultures, ancient artifacts, and even some deep-cut Marvel references that'll make any fan geek out.
Leader of the Church of Truths.
But what really won me over was the heart. This game has heart. It's not just about saving the galaxy, it's about family. The Guardians are a dysfunctional bunch, but they care about each other in ways that feel real and earned. There are moments of vulnerability, of loss, of triumph that hit hard because the game takes the time to build these characters and their relationships. By the end, I wasn't just playing as Star-Lord, I felt like I was part of the team. And the combat, it grew on me. At first, it felt repetitive, just shooting enemies with Star-Lord's blasters and occasionally calling in team attacks. But as I unlocked more abilities and learned how to synergize with the team, it became this chaotic, strategic dance. Each Guardian has their own unique skills, and figuring out how to use them together is incredibly satisfying. Plus, the game throws in some wild set pieces that keep things fresh, like zero-gravity battles and massive boss fights. Oh, and the music. The soundtrack is a mix of 80s classics and original tracks that perfectly capture the game's tone. There's nothing quite like charging into battle with "Never Gonna Give You Up" blasting in the background. It's cheesy, it's over the top, and it's absolutely perfect. Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy is a game that starts slow but builds into something unforgettable. It's funny, heartfelt, and full of surprises. If you bounced off it like I did at first, give it another shot. It might just become one of your favorite adventures. Death Stranding. When I first started playing it, I was bored. Like, genuinely bored. I mean, here's a game where you play as Norman Reedus walking across a post-apocalyptic landscape delivering packages. That's it. No explosions, no epic battles, just walking. And not even fun walking, like balance your cargo so you don't trip over a rock walking. I thought, Hideo Kojima? What are you doing? I put it down after a few hours, convinced it was the most pretentious, overhyped game I'd ever played. But then, something weird happened. I couldn't stop thinking about it. The world, the atmosphere, the sheer weirdness of it all kept pulling me back. So I gave it another shot. And this time, I didn't just play it, I let it sink in. And you know what? Death Stranding isn't just a game, it's an experience. It's a meditation on connection, isolation, and the human condition. And by the end, it completely won me over. Let's start with the gameplay. At its core, Death Stranding is a delivery simulator. You're Sam Porter Bridges, and your job is to reconnect a fractured America by delivering supplies to isolated settlements. Sounds simple, right? But it's not. Every delivery is a journey. You have to plan your route, manage your cargo, and navigate treacherous terrain. And the terrain? Oh man, the terrain. It's not just a backdrop. It's the main antagonist. Mountains, rivers, rocky cliffs, and even rain that ages everything it touches. You'll need ladders, ropes, and even vehicles to get where you're going. And if you mess up, you'll fall, lose your cargo, and have to start over. It's frustrating at first, but once you get into the rhythm, it becomes oddly satisfying. There's something deeply rewarding about successfully completing a difficult delivery. Then there's the world. Death Stranding's world is hauntingly beautiful. It's desolate, eerie, and full of mystery. The landscapes are vast and empty, but they're also strangely peaceful. You'll spend hours just walking, taking in the scenery, and listening to the soundtrack, which is absolutely incredible. Low Roar's music fits the tone perfectly, creating this sense of melancholy and hope that sticks with you long after you've stopped playing. But what really sets Death Stranding apart is its themes. This is a game about connection, not just in the literal sense of reconnecting cities, but in the emotional sense of bringing people together. The game has this unique multiplayer system where you can leave supplies, build structures, and even send messages to other players. You never see them, but you feel their presence. It's a reminder that even in a world as isolated as Death Stranding's, you're not alone. And that message hit me hard, especially during the pandemic when the game first came out. It felt timely. And the story. Oh man. It's classic Kojima, weird, convoluted, and full of metaphors. You've got BBs, bridge babies, beach things, BTs, and a villain named Higgs who might as well be a walking meme. It's a lot to take in, and at times it feels like Kojima is just making stuff up as he goes along, but beneath all the weirdness, there's a heartfelt story about loss, redemption, and the bonds that tie us together. By the end, I was emotionally drained in the best way possible. Death Stranding isn't for everyone. It's slow, it's strange, and it demands patience. But if you give it a chance, it becomes something truly special. It's a game that stays with you not because of its gameplay or its graphics, but because of the way it makes you feel. If you bounced off it like I did at first, give it another shot. It might just change the way you see games, and maybe even the world. The Witcher 3. Here's a confession, when I first started playing this game, I didn't get it, like, at all. I mean, everyone was saying it's one of the best RPGs ever made, but for me, it felt overwhelming. The world was huge, the story was confusing, and Geralt, the main guy, felt like a grumpy old man who didn't want to be there. I tried to get into it, but after a few hours, I was like, nope, this isn't for me. I put it down and didn't touch it for months. I think, if I remember correctly, it was around 2016 when I first got introduced to the series, and I, being dumb me, directly jumped into The Witcher 3 without knowing shit about the world and its lore. And I am gonna be very, very honest, I got really bored in the first 2-3 hours. Maybe I had a bad attention span back then, and I just didn't like this old world. I was more of a modern day fast-paced games like GTA, but anyways, then something changed. I kept hearing people talk about how amazing it was, how it gets better the more you play, so I decided to give it another shot, and wow. Just wow. The Witcher 3 isn't just a game, it's a masterpiece. It's one of those rare games that completely pulls you in and doesn't let go. Let's start with the world. This game is huge, like ridiculously huge. You've got forests, mountains, cities, swamps. Everywhere you look, there's something to explore. But it's not just big for the sake of being big. Every corner of the world feels alive. You'll stumble into villages with their own problems, meet people with their own stories, and find monsters that aren't just there to fight, they're part of the world. It's not just a map, it's a place. Then there's the story. At first, it felt like too much. You're Geralt, a monster hunter, and you're looking for this girl named Ciri who's like a daughter to you. But along the way, you get pulled into politics, wars, and all kinds of drama. It was hard to keep up at first, but once I got into it, I couldn't stop. The writing is so good, the characters feel real, like they have their own lives and problems, and the choices you make, they actually matter. You'll make decisions that change the world, and sometimes you won't even know the consequences until hours later. It's not just a story, it's your story. And the side quests. Oh man, in most games, side quests are just filler. Go here, kill that, come back. But in The Witcher 3, they're some of the best parts of the game. Every quest feels like its own little story. You'll help a ghost find peace, solve a murder mystery, or even just play cards with some locals. It's not just busy work, it's part of the world. Combat is another thing. At first it felt clunky. You've got swords, magic, and potions, but it took me a while to figure out how to use them properly. Once I got the hang of it though, it became really fun. Fighting monsters isn't just about hacking and slashing, you have to prepare. You'll need to read up on the monster, brew the right potions, and use the right spells. It's like being a detective and a warrior at the same time. The Witcher 3 is a game that starts slow, but gets better and better the more you play. It's not just about fighting monsters or saving the world, it's about the people, the choices, and the stories. If you bounced off it like I did at first, give it another shot, it might just become one of your favorite games ever.
The good will die.
Kingdom Come Deliverance. Okay, so Kingdom Come Deliverance. Yeah, this one and we had a rocky start. First impressions, not good. Honestly, I thought it was kind of a mess. The combat felt clunky and awkward, like I was flailing around with a sword. And Henry, the main character, I don't know, he wasn't grabbing me. I remember thinking, this is supposed to be realistic? I'm just running into walls and getting lost in the woods. I think I played it for a couple of hours, got frustrated, and just uninstalled it. I was done. Thought that was the end of that. But you know how it is sometimes. Months later, I stumbled across someone streaming it, and they were loving it. They were talking about how immersive it was, how much they cared about the characters, and how your choices actually had consequences. And it got me thinking, maybe I was too quick to judge. Maybe I missed something. So I did something I rarely do. I reinstalled it. And wow, am I glad I did. This time, something just clicked. I started to get the hang of the combat. It's still not perfect, but it's unique, and once you understand it, it can be pretty satisfying. And Henry, he grew on me. He's not your typical hero, he's kind of awkward and flawed, but that's what makes him interesting. And the world, man, the world is incredible. It's so detailed and immersive. You really feel like you're living in medieval Bohemia. The forests, the villages, the castles, it's all so well done. And the quests, some of them are genuinely engaging. They're not just fetch quests, they have real stories and interesting characters.
Agreed that all this unrest must come to an end.
I ended up sinking a ton of hours into Kingdom Come Deliverance. It's a big, sprawling game and I got completely lost in it. It's still got its rough edges. It's not a perfect game by any means, but it's a unique game, and it's a game that I completely misjudged the first time around. It went from a game I actively disliked to one of my favorites. It just goes to show, sometimes it's worth giving a game a second chance. You never know, you might just find a hidden gem. Persona 5. This one's a little embarrassing, actually. Everyone was raving about it. Best RPG ever, stylish, amazing soundtrack, I heard it all, and naturally, I was skeptical. I'd tried previous Persona games, and they just hadn't clicked with me. Too much anime tropes, I thought, too much social sim stuff, I just didn't get the hype. So when Persona 5 came out, I kinda shrugged it off. Yeah, another Persona game, I thought. I'll get to it eventually, which, usually means never. Then a friend of mine, who has very different tastes from me, was absolutely obsessed with it. Like, couldn't stop talking about it, and I thought, okay, maybe there's something to this, so I borrowed it from him. And man, I was so wrong. Like, completely and utterly wrong. Persona 5 it's just so good. It's stylish, yes, but it's not just style over substance. The combat is fantastic, it's turn-based, but it's so dynamic and engaging. The story, while it does have some anime tropes, is actually really compelling. I got invested in the characters, I cared about what happened to them, and the social sim stuff, yeah, I ended up loving it. Building relationships with the confidants, it actually added a lot to the game, and the soundtrack, oh my god, the soundtrack, it's just chef's kiss. I ended up sinking, I don't even know how many hours into Persona 5. It's a long game, but I didn't want it to end. It's one of those games that just gets its hooks into you and doesn't let go. It's stylish, it's fun, it's got a great story, and it's got an amazing soundtrack. It's everything I thought I didn't want in a game, and yet I absolutely loved it. Persona 5 taught me a valuable lesson. Don't judge a game by its cover, and definitely don't judge it based on what you think you know about a series. Sometimes you just gotta give it a chance, and I'm so glad I did with this one. Red Dead Redemption 2. So this one's a confession, a gaming sin, if you will, because let's be real, Red Dead Redemption 2 it's Red Dead Redemption 2. It's a masterpiece. It's a work of art. It's, in my humble opinion, one of the best games ever made. I adore it. I sing its praises. I tell everyone they have to play it, but you knew there was a but coming, didn't you? I dropped it. The first time around, I just dropped it. Crazy, right? I know, I can barely believe it myself. Here's this game, universally acclaimed, gorgeous, deep, with an amazing story and incredible characters, and I just couldn't get into it. I think I played it for maybe 10 hours, and I don't know, I wasn't feeling it. Maybe I was overwhelmed by the open world, maybe I wasn't in the right mood, maybe I just wasn't ready for it. Whatever the reason, I put it down, and I didn't pick it up again for a long time. I remember thinking, yeah, it's pretty, but I don't get the hype. I know. I'm cringing on my past self.
Oh, thank you, sir. You are a trooper.
But like with all the games on this list, something pulled me back. I kept hearing people talk about it, about the story, about Arthur Morgan, about the incredible world, and I started to feel guilty, like I was missing out on something truly special, so I decided to give it another go, and this time it clicked. Hard. I got completely sucked in, I got lost in the world, I fell in love with the characters, I cried at the end. Seriously, Red Dead 2 is one of those games with the most insane post-game depression, man. Red Dead Redemption 2 it's an experience. It's not just a game, it's a journey, and I'm so glad I gave it a second chance because honestly, I think it's one of the best games ever made. It's a masterpiece, and I almost missed out on it. It just goes to show, sometimes you have to be in the right place at the right time with the right mindset, and sometimes you just have to give a game a second chance, especially one as amazing as Red Dead Redemption 2. Spec Ops The Line. This one is a tricky one. It's a game I appreciate so much more now than when I first played it. The reason I first played Spec Ops was because it had the same voice actor as Uncharted's Nathan Drake. And if you don't know, Uncharted is my absolute all-time favorite game. From Uncharted 1, 4, all of them are masterpieces. So when I found out Nolan North was the main voice in Spec Ops, I got interested too, but back then, meh. I was expecting a fun, over-the-top, action-packed military shooter, you know, the kind of game where you blow stuff up, shoot bad guys, and feel like a hero, and initially that's kind of what Spec Ops The Line seemed to be. Lots of shooting, lots of explosions, lots of, well, not a lot of anything else, at least at first glance. I remember playing it for a few hours, and I wasn't feeling it. It felt generic. It felt like every other military shooter out there. I thought, yeah, this is okay, I guess, but I wasn't blown away. I put it down, and honestly, I kind of forgot about it. Then, I started hearing whispers. People talking about the story, about the themes, about how it's not your typical military shooter, and I was intrigued. I thought, maybe I missed something. So, I picked it up again, and this time, I actually paid attention to the story, and man, I was not prepared for what was to come. Spec Ops The Line it's a gut punch. It's a deconstruction of the military shooter genre. It's a game that makes you question everything you thought you knew about heroism and war. It's dark, it's disturbing, and it's absolutely brilliant. I don't want to spoil anything because the story is best experienced firsthand, but let me just say this. Spec Ops The Line is not the game you think it is. It's not about shooting bad guys and saving the day. It's about the psychological toll of war. It's about the choices you make and the consequences of those choices. It's about the blurred lines between right and wrong. It's a game that stays with you long after you've finished playing it. It's a game that made me rethink my entire perspective on military shooters. It went from a game I thought was generic and forgettable to a game I consider to be a masterpiece. It's a powerful and thought-provoking experience, and I'm so glad I gave it a second chance. It just goes to show, sometimes the best games are the ones that surprise you, the ones that challenge you, the ones that make you think. Yakuza 0. Okay, so, Yakuza 0, this one's a funny story actually. I stumbled across the Yakuza series completely by accident on Game Pass. I'd never heard of it before, which is kind of crazy considering how popular it is. I mean, I'm usually pretty plugged into what's going on in the gaming world, but Yakuza? Nope, nothing. I knew absolutely nothing about it. I saw it on Game Pass, thought, hey, that looks interesting, and downloaded it. So, I booted up, and it's in Japanese. like completely in Japanese. Now, here's the thing about me. I'm an English-only kind of guy. I play all my games in English. I had never played or watched anything in foreign language. I know, it's terrible. I should broaden my horizons, blah blah blah, but it's just a personal preference. So, seeing Yakuza 0 completely in Japanese, yeah, that was a deal breaker for me. I played for maybe an hour, got completely lost, couldn't understand anything, and just gave up. I was like, nope, not for me. I uninstalled it and forgot about it. But, again, there's always a but. I have to admit, even in that first hour, the cutscenes were amazing. They were so stylish, so over the top, so Japanese. I was intrigued even though I couldn't understand what anyone was saying because I want really used to reading subtitles before Yakuza games. Call me crazy, but it is what it is. And I kept hearing people talk about the Yakuza series, how great it was, how crazy the story was. So after a while, I thought, you know what, maybe I should give it another shot. Now I tried getting used to the subtitles in Yakuza 0. It was a bit annoying at first, but oh man, am I glad I did stuck with. Yakuza 0 it's just so much fun. It's crazy, it's over the top, it's dramatic, it's hilarious, it's heartwarming, it's heartbreaking, it's everything. The story is absolutely bonkers, the characters are unforgettable, and the gameplay is addictive. I got completely sucked in. I spent hours just wandering around Kamurocho, doing side quests, playing mini games and getting into fights with random thugs. It's a game that doesn't take itself too seriously, and it's all the better for it. Yakuza 0 went from a game I dismissed because it was in Japanese to one of my favorite games of all time. It just goes to show, sometimes you have to step outside your comfort zone, even if it means dealing with subtitles, to discover something truly special. Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. This one's, woo, complicated. See, I'm a huge Metal Gear fan, like huge. I played every game in the series, so when The Phantom Pain came out, I was hyped, beyond hyped. I was counting down the days, I pre-ordered the collector's edition, I was ready to be blown away, and I wasn't. Not at first, anyway. I started playing and, I don't know, something just felt off. The open world felt empty. The missions felt repetitive. The story, well, the story was there, but it wasn't grabbing me like previous Metal Gear games had. I remember thinking, this is it? This is the culmination of the Metal Gear saga? I'm just running around Afghanistan doing fetch quests? I played for a while, but I just wasn't feeling it. I was disappointed. Honestly, I was kind of angry. I put the game down and I didn't touch it for months. I was convinced that The Phantom Pain was a letdown, a shadow of its predecessors. But you know, Metal Gear. It's Metal Gear. It's Kojima. There's always more than meets the eye. And I kept hearing whispers, people saying that the gameplay was amazing, that the open world was actually brilliant, that the story was something. So eventually, I decided to give it another try. And this time, I approached it differently. I stopped trying to play it like a traditional Metal Gear game. I embraced the open world, I experimented with the gameplay mechanics, and slowly but surely, it clicked. The gameplay, man, the gameplay is insane. It's so deep, so flexible, so rewarding. There are so many different ways to approach each mission. You can go in guns blazing, you can sneak around like a ghost, you can call in airstrikes, you can even Fulton extract sheep. It's brilliant. And the open world, which I initially found empty, suddenly felt like a playground. There were so many opportunities for emergent gameplay, so many unexpected encounters, and the story, well, the story is Metal Gear. It's convoluted, it's confusing, it's brilliant, it's insane. It's not the story I was expecting, but it's a story that I appreciate more and more as I think about it. Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain is a weird game, it's not perfect, it's not even my favorite Metal Gear game, but it's a game that I completely misjudged the first time around. It's a game that I now appreciate for its incredible gameplay, its unique open world, and it's Metal Gear NieR. It went from a game I was disappointed in to a game I respect and admire. Disco Elysium.
This was really good work.
Disco Elysium. This one's different. It's not like the other games on this list where I bounced off because of the gameplay or the difficulty. With Disco Elysium, it was the vibe. The first time I tried it, I just didn't get it. I was overwhelmed by the sheer amount of text, the weird dialogue options, the everything. I remember thinking, what is this game? I'm just walking around, talking to people, and reading walls of text. Where's the action? Where's the gameplay? I played for a couple of hours, got completely lost and confused, and just gave up. I thought, this game is too weird for me, I'm not smart enough to understand it. Which, you know, is kind of ironic considering the game is all about, well, thinking, but at the time I just wasn't in the right headspace for it. I wanted something more straightforward, something more gamey. Disco Elysium felt like a novel disguised as a video game, and I just wasn't in the mood for it. But like with all the games on this list, something kept nagging at me. I kept hearing people talk about how brilliant it was, how unique it was, how it was unlike anything else they'd ever played, and I started to feel like I was missing out. So I decided to give it another try. And this time I approached it differently. I slowed down. I actually read the text. I tried to understand the characters, the world, the story, and slowly but surely it clicked. Disco Elysium it's a masterpiece. It's a work of art. It's a game that makes you think, makes you feel, makes you question everything. It's a game that's both hilarious and heartbreaking, both absurd and profound. It's a game that's unlike anything else I've ever played. It's not for everyone, I'll admit that. It's a very text-heavy game, and it requires a lot of reading and thinking. But if you're willing to put in the effort, if you're willing to immerse yourself in its world, it's an experience that you won't soon forget. Disco Elysium went from a game I didn't understand to a game I absolutely adore. It's a game that changed my perspective on what video games can be. It's a game that proves that games can be art, that they can be literature, that they can be meaningful. It just goes to show, sometimes you have to be in the right mood, in the right headspace to appreciate the true genius of a game. And sometimes you just have to give a game a second chance, especially one as unique and brilliant as Disco Elysium. Life is Strange. This one's a funny one, a real roller coaster of emotions actually, because get this, Life is Strange is now like etched into my gaming soul. I'm talking soundtrack on repeat, multiple playthroughs, the whole 9 yards. It's one of those games for me, but, and this is a big dramatic but, I nearly bounced off it hard the first time. Picture this, I'm hearing all the buzz, emotional roller coaster, choices that matter, indie darling, I'm ready, I'm primed for an amazing narrative experience. I fire it up and crickets. I found Max, our time-bending protagonist, to be, well, a bit much. The dialogue felt stilted, the whole teen drama vibe was giving me the ick, and I just wasn't connecting with the story. I remember thinking, is this it? Is this the game everyone's raving about? I'm just walking around a high school talking to people? Where's the magic? I limped through the first episode, feeling thoroughly unimpressed, and then I bailed. Put it down, didn't think twice about it, figured it just wasn't my cup of tea. Too much melodrama, not enough oomph.
You can rewind time, Max. That's insane.
But the whispers, they persisted. Like a persistent little bug in my ear, I kept hearing about Life is Strange, about the twists, the turns, the emotional gut punches, and a tiny voice in the back of my head whispered, maybe you were wrong. So I did something I rarely do. I went back, gave it another shot, and this time, something shifted. It wasn't a sudden dramatic aha moment, it was more like a slow burn. I started to appreciate Max's awkwardness, her vulnerability. I started to care about Chloe, her rebellious spirits, her pain. The dialogue, which I initially found cheesy, started to feel authentic, real, and the story. Oh, the story. It grabbed me by the heartstrings and didn't let go. By the time I reached the end, I was a blubbering mess. Seriously. Tears streaming down my face. I was emotionally drained, but in the best possible way. Life is Strange isn't perfect, it has its flaws, but it's a game that resonated with me on a deeply personal level. It made me think about friendship, loss, regret, and the weight of choices. It's a game that I will never forget. And it's a game that I almost missed out on. It just goes to show, sometimes you have to be in the right place at the right time with the right mindset.
These visions, this power. I keep expecting to wake up one more time.
The Pentiment. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, you've probably never even heard of this game, and that's okay. It's niche, like really niche. It's the kind of game that's probably only going to appeal to, well, nerds. History nerds, art history nerds, narrative adventure nerds. Basically, if you like deep dives into obscure historical periods and text-heavy dialogue, then maybe this game is for you. If not, yeah, you can probably skip this one. And, full disclosure, I almost did too. I remember seeing the initial trailers. Medieval Germany, illuminated manuscripts, murder mystery. My initial reaction was a polite, oh, that's interesting, which, you know, usually translates to, I'll probably never play that. It just seemed too academic, too dry, too Pentiment. I filed it away in the back of my mind, figuring I'd get to it eventually, which, let's be honest, usually means never. But then, just while browsing Steam, I came across this game again. I saw it had an overwhelmingly positive rating, and I set it on for a while, added the game to my wish list, which, checking out the screenshots, I mean, yes, the hand-drawn arts and all are definitely my thing. I really love this soothing artist style. So I finally decided to buy this game on a discount one day. I was still very skeptical and not all too excited, but man oh man, Pentiment it's a breath of fresh air. It's unlike anything I've played before. The art style, which I initially found very interesting but still a bit odd, is actually gorgeous. It's like a living, breathing, illuminated manuscript. And the story, which I thought would be dry and boring, is actually incredibly engaging. It's a murder mystery, yes, but it's also so much more than that. It's a deep dive into the history of the Holy Roman Empire, the Reformation, and the lives of ordinary people living in a turbulent time. It's a game that's both educational and entertaining, both thought-provoking and emotionally resonant. Pentiment is not a game for everyone. It's slow-paced, it's text-heavy, and it requires a certain amount of patience. But if you're willing to put in the time, if you're willing to immerse yourself in its world, it's an experience that you won't soon forget. It's a game that surprised me, a game that challenged me, a game that I now consider to be a hidden gem. It just goes to show, sometimes the most unexpected games are the most rewarding. And sometimes it's worth taking a chance on something that's a little bit different, even if it's something that your inner nerd is screaming at you to play. Batman Arkham Origins. Origins is the Arkham game that everyone seems to forget about. The red-headed stepchild of the franchise, if you will. And honestly, I kind of get it. When it first came out, I was underwhelmed. I was expecting Arkham Asylum or Arkham City levels of brilliance, and Origins just wasn't it. I remember playing it and thinking, this feels familiar. Too familiar, almost. It felt like more of the same, but not as good. The story wasn't grabbing me, the new villains felt generic, and the gameplay, while solid, didn't really add anything new. I played it, I finished it, and then I kind of forgot about it. It just faded into the background, overshadowed by its predecessors. I filed it away in my brain as the okay Arkham game. But you know, sometimes revisiting something with fresh eyes can make all the difference. Years later, I decided to give Arkham Origins another go. I'd just finished replaying Arkham City and I was itching for more Batman action. So I dusted off Origins and I actually enjoyed it a lot. This time, I wasn't expecting it to be Arkham Asylum or Arkham City. I wasn't expecting it to reinvent the wheel. I just wanted a fun Batman game, and that's exactly what I got. The combat, while familiar, is still satisfying, the Predator sections are still tense and engaging, and the story, while not as groundbreaking as the other Arkham games, is actually pretty good. It's a solid Batman story, with some interesting twists and turns, and the boss fights, man, some of those boss fights are brutal. Also, I want to mention that insane boss fight with Deathstroke. Holy man, took me 3 hours to beat that guy. His reflexes were insanely freaking fast, but I just did, so. Batman Arkham Origins isn't a masterpiece. It's not as innovative or as memorable as the other Arkham games, but it's a good game, a solid, enjoyable Batman game, and I completely misjudged it the first time around. I think I was too focused on what it wasn't instead of appreciating what it was. It's a game that deserves more credit than it gets. It's a game that I now appreciate for its solid gameplay, its engaging story, and its challenging boss fights. It just goes to show, sometimes it's worth giving a game a second chance, especially a game as unfairly overlooked as Batman Arkham Origins. It might not be the best Arkham game, but it's still a damn good Batman game. HiFi Rush. This one's a bit of a surprise, honestly. A rhythm action game from Tango Gameworks, the studio behind The Evil Within and Ghostwire Tokyo. It just seemed out of character, like really out of character. I remember seeing the initial trailers and thinking, what is this? It looked colorful, it looked fun, it looked uncharacteristic. And honestly, I was skeptical. I'm not the biggest rhythm game fan, and I just wasn't sure if Tango Gameworks could pull it off. It felt like a weird departure from their usual style. I filed it away in the maybe someday section of my brain, fully expecting to forget about it. Then, the reviews started pouring in, and they were glowing. Everyone was raving about HiFi Rush. They were calling it stylish, fun, addictive, and surprisingly innovative. And I thought, maybe I was wrong. So I decided to give it a shot, and boy am I glad I did. HiFi Rush it's a delight. It's a burst of pure joy. It's a game that's just so much fun to play. The rhythm action gameplay is incredibly satisfying. The music is fantastic. The visuals are vibrant and stylish. And the story, while not groundbreaking, is charming and engaging. It's a game that just makes you smile. It's infectious. It's the kind of game that you can't help but tap your foot to while you're playing. I was completely wrong about HiFi Rush. I underestimated it. I thought it was going to be a weird, out-of-place experiment from Tango Gameworks, but it's actually one of their best games. It's a breath of fresh air. It's a game that proves that Tango Gameworks is capable of more than just horror. It's a game that I now recommend to everyone. It's just so much fun. It's a pure, unadulterated joy to play. It went from a game I was skeptical about to a game I absolutely adore. Well guys, that was all. Let me know which games you didn't like at first, and make sure to leave a like. I would really appreciate that. Now, have a great day ahead, and I will see you later.